Saving Private Ryan, a film that most people regard as one of the most realistic war films to ever be put on the big screen. It is a film about the effect that war can have on human beings. It is a film about the brutality of war. It is a film about brotherhood. Director Steven Spielberg chose to make this project because the idea of a mission to rescue someone not only moved him, but attracted him to the story.
The principal mission was to rescue someone for a good reason, and that attracted me to the story. That moved me.
Spielberg had already made films that took place in the World War II time frame. Some examples are the Indiana Jones films, Schindler's List, 1941, and Empire of the Sun. However, pre-production for Saving Private Ryan was shortened due to Spielberg wanting to shoot his film Amistad immediately after he finished Jurassic Park: The Lost World and before he began making Saving Private Ryan. One of Spielberg's primary goals for this film was to make sure that this movie was as realistic as possible, which is why after he casted people such as Tom Hanks, Tom Sizemore, Edward Burns, Barry Pepper, Adam Goldberg, Vin Diesel, Giovanni Ribisi, and Jeremy Davies, Spielberg sent them to a 7-day boot camp with retired Marine Captain Dale Dye instead of doing rehearsals for the film. But little did the 8 cast members realize what they signed up for, as they were set to do rigorous 6-mile runs before dawn, weapon training, and military exercises. The 8 men received only 3 hours of sleep and were given a soggy blanket due to the downpour of rain, and slept inside of a tent which was also wet. They were given the same ration of food that military men ate in the 1940s. During the boot camp, Captain Dale Dye would look upon these actors not as actors, but as military men, as throughout the camp, Dye would only refer to them as turds and not by their names. But if the cast members were seen speaking to each other out of character, they would have to do push-ups. If the cast members were to refer to their weapons as a gun and not as a weapon, they'd have to do push-ups. Edward Burns, one of the cast members of the film, mentioned in an interview that, quote, "You had to keep your weapon no more than 3 feet away from you. If you went over and talked to someone without your weapon, Captain Dye was in your face screaming." Burns continued saying in the interview, "We went out a bunch of pansy actors and we came back not like soldiers, but as close as you can get in 7 days. We did a good job," unquote. The other cast members also said that they grew a lot closer after that week of hard work. On the final day of boot camp, however, Captain Dye left the cast members with this speech, quote, "See these strings I wear on my arm?" as he points out a set of strings tied around his wrist. "They are to remind me of the soldiers that I lost in active duty. I had a huge emptiness in my heart for these soldiers. The efforts that you have to put into being soldiers, to being authentic, the pride that you put in fills some of that emptiness because their voices will go on through you," unquote. The opening sequence of the film, where soldiers are running for their lives across the beaches of Normandy, Spielberg wanted to make sure that it was accurate as possible. Steven then found a beach along the Irish coast that he felt was the closest he would get as far as the look of the beach. 750 extras were used during this sequence provided by the Irish Army. Steven Spielberg and his cinematographer Janusz Kaminski, whom Spielberg had worked with before with films such as Schindler's List and Jurassic Park: The Lost World. Kaminski and Spielberg watched documentaries and newsreels about World War II that were shot by military cameramen. They both even considered shooting the film black and white as they did with Schindler's List. That idea obviously didn't come to fruition. Instead, Kaminski wanted the film to look as if military men were shooting the battle in the 1940s with 16mm cameras. Spielberg was willing to take that risk and shot a lot of the action sequences throughout the film with that idea, which made it a little bit easier considering fake blood and water was being splattered on the camera. But Kaminski figured it would have happened during the actual battle, so they kept shooting. Kaminski also wanted to make sure the camera felt the impact of the explosions going off on the beach. The hard work that went into recreating D-Day was a massive success, as this sequence is known as one of the best openings in film history. The next big battle to occur in the film comes in the third act when Private Ryan, played by Matt Damon, is found and the remaining soldiers have to defend a bridge inside of a French town from the Germans.
Enemy from the east. He sees Tiger tanks, 2 of them, Panzer tanks, 2 of them. Infantry, 50 plus change.
Matt Damon spoke about his time on set and said how he'd shadow Spielberg around to take in as much as he can, but by the time it was midday, Damon was exhausted from all that he was taking in, but Spielberg was still on his feet getting the job done. Spielberg first came into contact with Damon when Robin Williams, Matt Damon's co-star in the Oscar-winning film Good Will Hunting, introduced him to Steven Spielberg on the set of Amistad, where other cast members of the film such as Vin Diesel and Barry Pepper had also met with Steven. 2 weeks after the set visit, Damon received a phone call to play none other than Private James Francis Ryan. Damon almost felt like an outcast on the set with the rest of the cast. He said in an interview, quote, "I wasn't invited to the boot camp. It was a great ploy on Steven's part because what it did, since the film is about these 8 guys who are looking for one guy, they are risking their lives for this one guy and a resentment breeds among them for this one guy. The boot camp couldn't help but foster a kernel of resentment, because while they were sleeping face down in the rain, they were well aware that I was at home in bed. It created that separation." Unquote. The fake town of Ramel, where the climax of the film takes place in, was located 45 minutes north of London, at an abandoned British aerospace facility. The set was built by production designer Tom Sanders, who was nominated at the Academy Awards for Best Production Design. Some of the memorable parts during this sequence, such as when Adam Goldberg's character, Private Mellish, gets stabbed in a combat scene, was apparently thought of the day of shooting the scene, where in the script Goldberg's character was supposed to get shot rather than being stabbed. But Goldberg had done so well in his combat training, they ended up switching the scene to what it is now.
Du hast keine Chance. Lass es uns beenden. What's up? Stop! Es ist einfacher für dich. Viel einfacher. Weißt du, es ist gleich vorbei.
Once the film was finished, Spielberg was worried that no one was going to go see the film. Some associates had even told Steven that his film was too tough. Spielberg was relieved as the film went on to make $482 million at the box office and received 11 Academy Award nominations, with 5 of them being wins, including Best Director for Steven Spielberg and Cinematography for Janusz Kaminski. Steven Spielberg, whose father had served during World War II, made this film for the heroes that fought during those dark times, and most people would say that he did more than a great job bringing this heart-wrenching cinematic film to life.
This movie is about the veterans. It's for the veterans of World War II. We talked about that often when we made the picture. We said this is for them.
I think it's important to keep telling the stories, understanding them and understanding what the basis for this was. The more you talk about the horrors of a war, the more you are less likely to try to get involved in another one.
On the last day of shooting, Tom Hanks took a group of the cast members behind the set and grabbed a bottle of Jack Daniels with some shot glasses. Hanks then raised a toast and said the following, quote, "Guys, I want to make a little toast about how great an experience it's been working with all of you. I've been to the editing room and I've seen what Steven has cut so far, and I have good news and bad news. The good news is that we are making a pretty incredible film, and if the movie turns out like I think it's going to turn out, we're all going to be a part of film history. This is a movie that will live on long after we're all gone. Generations will watch this movie after you've all passed. That's the good news. The bad news is that it's all downhill from here." Unquote.
Earned